Hi everyone, you are listening to the First Year Decoded podcast hosted by IEEE UFT, the show that decodes the first year experience by providing valuable insights and experience from current engineering students. I'm your host, Brittany Chow, a Track 1 ECE 2T2 and one of the logistics directors at IEEE UFT. Along with the producer Akinori Kimura, we will explore the various topics of academia and professional development to help you succeed in your first year of engineering. In today's episode, we did a full breakdown of the first year courses so that you know exactly what to expect before you even start the course. I certainly wish I had these insights before my first year because I know it would have had a profound impact on my experience with these courses. It is important to mention that since IEEE UFT represents electronics and electrical engineers, we will be focusing on courses taken by ECE and Track 1 students. However, the majority of the courses discussed in this episode is taken by all first years. And even if we discuss courses you are not taking, the tips and insights from the courses may be applicable to your courses. Hey guys, welcome on the show today. Today we have three guests with us, Asir, Himanish, and Hamza. Do you guys mind introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Asir. I'm an ECE 2T2 plus Track 1, so I'll be going to third year in fall. I guess what I've been doing over the summer, playing a lot of video games and a little bit of MATLAB.
Okay, I'm Hamza, and I'm an ECE 2T2 Track 1, so it's the same as Asir. I'm currently in Dubai. Over the summer, I've been mostly just playing video games.
So my name is Himanish. I am ECE 2T3, so I'm going into my second year of computer engineering. Over the summer, I have been playing video games, yes, and also learning to cook Indian cuisine.
Amazing. So for this episode, what we're going to talk about is specifically how each Core-8 courses are structured and I guess our experiences in these courses. So without further ado, let's move on to these courses. So for the first course we're going to talk about is APS 100, Orientation to Engineering. The majority of this course talks about how to excel as an engineering student at UFT. It also helps us with stress management and mental health. However, it also goes over all the ethics and principles that an engineer should be aware of. Since Asir is going to be an APS 100 TA next semester, I was wondering if you can speak a little bit maybe on this course, your experience, or what you're looking forward to as a TA.
Yeah, it's a great course. It teaches you a lot. This course has a lot of great practical assignments. One of them is to build a resume. So this was where I built my first resume.
Yes.
And it's also just a really nice chill pill. Like in engineering, you have all these technical courses you have to go through, but orientation to engineering is just a way to kind of relax and meet the other people who you take the course with. So you get to build some friendships and also learn about the do's and don'ts of being an engineering student in this day and age.
For sure. I remember that resume building assignment. I feel like I should have used that opportunity more and just asked the TA and actually construct a resume, because for me, myself, I remember just like not knowing anything and be like, I'll just submit my old one, which is definitely a bad thought, bad move. But I guess if I can redo, I would get more helps from the TA for sure.
Like any course at UFT, I feel like it's really important to utilize your resources, which is even now as a third year, I don't do nearly enough of. And especially in APS 100, it's kind of like unique because you'll be talking with usually third year and fourth year students. Yeah, so it's a cool experience because like your other TAs will typically be master students. I mean, sometimes there'll be like upper years. So I would recommend like trying to talk to your TA. It'll vary session to session, but
yeah, I think the tutorial sessions in these courses are very chill. And I made a lot of friends with people that were in my tutorial because it was just really nice to talk about your experience during first year while you're going through things. And then everyone helps each other. My tutorial session was actually right after the exams scheduled. So every time after the exam, we just go in and just rant about the exam. So it was like great bonding time.
So Asir, you're going to be a APS 100 TA this year. Do you know anything about what you're planning for the upcoming year since it's going to be mostly online?
Yeah, I actually do put a lot of thought into it. Every day I like to go on a walk and sometimes like to role play how the first day will go. I'm trying to get like a relatable but kind of also a knowledgeable vibe that I want to pass off. And so I just try and make sure that I can do the best of that. And like there's some areas where I think like I definitely have nailed down, like say time management or learning strategies, but there are also some that like I would definitely need to learn from other people on how to do better, like maybe stress management. Maybe that those are some things I could learn from the other TAs or even instructors, and just be able to preach it better to the students.
Yeah, you mentioned you are good at time management. Do you want to expand on how you balance your time?
All right. Well, I guess the first intro to this is also through APS 100, where you have to build your own kind of schedule / planner. So I've kind of just stuck to what I learned from there. Like I use Google Calendar a lot, just make sure I kind of micromanage almost what I'm doing every hour of the day. I don't want to be super strict and say I have to be studying this subject from like 7 to 9 p.m. I keep it a little bit more flexible there, but I do schedule in when I am going to be studying. And I need to make sure that like I have time for all the different things I like to do in a day. So make sure I have time to de-wind, watch some YouTube videos, but also have some time to like just go on a walk, or maybe even like call some school buddies and say like, hey, I haven't seen you since like last Thursday. What's up?
Yeah, no, APS 100 is a really good course that teaches you a lot about like organization and time management. Like in my year, like one of the things that I remember about that course is that it helped me to plan out my schedule, and it helped me to lay out everything on Google Calendar so that I would know when I was going to study for this course, when I was going to plan for the midterm, when I was going to have time to chill with my friends and all of that. Like that's one of the most useful resource that APS 100 provides. And I think it's like really good that it comes from a TA who has experience.
A lot of students might have questions on like the difference between this course and like second semester, the seminars. So to break down these courses, like orientation to engineering is more how you organize your student life, as we mentioned previously, whereas the seminars is kind of like an introduction to what is happening recently, like in the field, and what upper years are doing in the courses. So just to clarify that. I guess since we're already talking about these more like engineering organization related courses, we can talk about engineering strategies and practice, which is APS 111 and 112. We call them ESP, this course as ESP. A short introduction to this course is that this course highly focuses on communication, including like how to write like an engineer, how to work as a team while dealing with a client. It also teaches you how to think like an engineer and solve problems as one. For this course, it's really unique because I think only U of T has this course, and it's a required course for engineers. In first semester, you get a team. In second semester, you also get a team, assigned team. You don't get to choose your team, which is one of the reasons why they do it, because you can have conflicts with people that you don't know, and working with people that you don't like is also really important. First semester and second semester, you're dealing with different clients. First semester, everyone in your year would have the same client. Second semester, you would have your own client that's not from in the industry. Hamza, do you want to speak a little bit about your experience in this course?
Actually, ESP1, I think I had like a really interesting experience. My team wasn't necessarily firing on all cylinders. We had very good qualified individuals, but you'll realize as you like work with different people that it's not all about you just working, right? It's about how you talk to each other, how you communicate, your different work styles, and you have to be able to balance that all together. I can give an overview of like what happened. Essentially, one thing that happened is that one of my teammates felt like they didn't get their work credited, the attribution table. So this was for the first report. So it wasn't a big deal, but he just wanted to be attributed that like he did some editing on a one section, which doesn't really matter, by the way. If you guys know your grade doesn't matter based off your attribution table, but it was the first one. So then two people in my group actually emailed my PA saying, oh, we didn't actually agree to this properly. And then it created a whole drama that actually expounded from that point on. It got bigger and bigger. From that point, we got conflicts. It was hard to talk. So the biggest thing I learned, at least from first semester, is like your team's going to have issues. So it's best to talk about them up front, because otherwise it'll just keep getting bigger and bigger. Things change, right? Like you have to be willing to adapt. You have to be willing to move on. So That's my general advice.
I do agree. I think one big thing is you have to be completely honest about your thoughts on everything, on your work, on other people's work. You have to try and learn how to point out people's mistakes or your own mistakes without being too aggressive. While you do that, you also have to keep in mind that you have to be able to take other people's opinions. If you're going to give, you have to be able to like take those opinions.
The best way to actually study is go to lectures. This is a course where you have to go to lectures if you don't want it to be like a giant pain study for later on, because like the exams are almost, I mean, technically all exams are based off lectures, but like it'll be very lecture specific, you know what I'm saying? So he might say something that's not on the textbook, a specific fact. So this course and lectures is really important.
Yeah, and like the questions that they have on exams and their midterms, they want you to answer in a very specific way, and they'll tell you exactly how they want you to answer. Like writing in engineering writing is what they call it, is very like specific, and they'll teach you all the correct ways to write about it for your project assignments and for the tests, so that you are doing your best for them. And if you go to the lectures, they'll like properly go through the midterms and the exams as well, so you're fully prepared for them.
Yeah, and the beginning questions are a lot of times very similar to what's going to be on the exam for the multiple choice.
I would say though, for these courses, it's very subjective in terms of the marking and your stuff. So if you have any confusion on why you didn't get a good mark or how to write a specific paragraph or how to scope your project, I think the TA would be the go-to person because they are the person marking your work. So it is their opinion that you should care about in that sense if you want to get a higher mark. You can have a lot of teams getting 30% while like some teams are getting like 80-something%.
If you're not happy with the way the TA marked your assignment, you can also go to the professors to request a remark. If you're really confident that the grade you got is not what you should have gotten, then I recommend going to the professors.
It's always worth talking to your TA first, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, one thing is always be open to communication. I mean, your TAs are going to be busy people, but especially in ESP, you need to be talking to each other, like your group mates, your TAs, etc. And for ESP2, right, you're going to be working with an actual client. So that communication also needs to be in there. You need to be talking to them as soon as you can.
Asira, do you have anything you want to add on?
Just like to say that like ESP is definitely like a very important course because coming into engineering, I just thought, oh, I'm good at math and science. Engineering is what I want to do. But like here's where you learn like what engineering actually is. And then in ESP2, you get to take on a more individualized, realistic project. So they can really vary. But for example, the one I did in ESP2 was just making sure, like working with a nuclear power plant, making sure they're transferring their components correctly. And so there's a large variety of projects you can accomplish. And it's really insightful to see like, wow, I'm in first year and I did such an important and difficult task.
Yeah, I'd say like there are a lot of like really interesting and cool projects.
Yeah, but even if you don't have a cool one, I think it's always take
helpful.
advantage of the opportunity you're given, right? I think that's a theme across all engineering courses or all courses. Take advantage of what you have. Mine wasn't that interesting. It was creating a cleaning system for the light fabrication facility. I was actually surprised, but it turns out they're using it, or at least a very similar method right now. So it's actually cool seeing and gratifying to see your own work like actually in progress.
Okay, so I guess we've spoke a lot about this course. We can move on to more of the technical. We're going to talk about calculus first. So calculus 1 and calculus 2, we take it in first semester, which is Math 186, 187. Calc 1 is more of a review of high school calculus. So it includes like limits, derivatives, integrals. If you haven't learned these things, it's fine because it starts off really basic. And whereas Calc 2 is basically even more integrals, more derivatives, and like polar coordinates.
Series and sequences, ODEs.
Yes. I came from a BC like curriculum, like graduated from a BC high school. So my foundation in calculus wasn't very strong. However, this course wasn't extremely difficult for me to grasp. Like at the beginning, I would say it starts off relatively slow. It assumes like no one knows anything about calculus. A lot of my friends told me that they had a hard time in this course because they took IB or AP in high school and like they made that mistake of, oh yeah, I know everything already, because at the beginning they basically knew everything. So they kind of like neglected this course, and then it gave them a hard time later because like the questions are definitely way more in depth than high school calculus.
For Calc 1, I came through from an AP system, advanced placement. So I knew basically all of Calculus 1. So for me, I didn't need to study a large amount. I mean, I practiced, but it wasn't a course that required a lot of my time. if you haven't done a few of the concepts, like then do some of the integrals, like practicing integrals, grinding those out, getting used to them is really important because on the exam, you're not going to really have time to figure out how to do stuff quickly. This is a pattern for a lot of these hard courses, but especially for Calc 1, just because you know the stuff doesn't mean you don't practice it. But I found Calc 1 to be kind of a standard math course. The lectures were valuable. The tutorials were good practice problems.
I took Calc 1 online, actually, so I can't speak for the in-person class, but I can say that the studying method is very similar. And the tip that I would give to students is that you summarize the content that you learn periodically. So what I mean by that is like after every chapter is completed, take one page and just summarize everything from that one chapter onto that one page and try to fit it all in. Because that's going to help you so much when you're studying for midterms and exams. Because by the end, like instead of searching through your entire binder, like looking for this one equation that you use for this one example question, like you'll just have it on those like 8 sheets of paper. It's going to make your life so much easier because there's so many like equations, integrals, derivatives, identities that you have to memorize for these midterms and exams, and they don't let you take a cheat sheet. So you need to have your own cheat sheet so you can memorize it before the midterm and exam start.
I was going to say, with respect to Calc 1, generally a common trend you'll see in like all the first year courses, unless it's like the second course, as in like Calc 2, for example, they're all just really introductory courses. So they assume you have zero knowledge and they just try and bring everyone to the same level of base. So don't worry, depending on like what system of math you come from, everyone will all be at the same level at the end. And just make sure that you continuously practice throughout the time and not like slack. That's mainly just the only way you get tripped up in Calc 1.
Yeah, for sure. I would say if anyone's having trouble taking notes or anything, my lecturer, Justin Coe, and if you search online, you can search Justin Coe calculus math notes, and then he has some really organized notes that you might be able to just look into. So if anyone wants to look into that.
Yeah, and also this is Calc 1, which is like pretty standard across the whole world.
Yeah.
So you can find resources everywhere. Like there's Paul's Math Notes, Khan Academy. Find whatever suits you best.
Yeah. Hamza, you can talk some more about Calc 2 if you want to.
I want to have a disclaimer quick, like all the courses we're talking about, we did in person. So
yeah,
online it might be an entirely different experience. Speaking on my experience of Calc 2, I'm pretty sure a lot of people found it harder than Calc 1. For all math courses especially, I think it's really important to try to get conceptual understanding. So that doesn't mean like you just go to lectures, you write down what the professor is saying. I mean, Calc 2 was never about that, which some people dislike. Calc 2 tests are quite different than Calc 1. Calc 1 was like textbook questions were very similar. Calc 2 is like, you have to be a bit more creative. At least that was my opinion. I had fun with the course, but I know a lot of other people didn't. My advice would be like, even if you're not enjoying the course, try to talk to your friends or Google stuff online, get visualizations, make sure you understand the concepts. I think that's more important in Calc 2 than Calc 1. I feel like Calc 1's a bit easier to like just grind out.
Biggest difference for me, at least between high school and university, is in high school, I never really thought about truly understanding the material fundamentally. I would do well and I'm like, that's fine. Whereas in university, you really do have to understand it. There are some questions that are really just, you have to have really conceptual like understanding for the course in order to solve the question. But also don't worry, there's always part marks. So you can really rely on that.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I would recommend not cramming any of these subjects because if you cram, like the concepts don't sink in. When you're faced with like not the computational questions, the questions that require like deep understanding in the exam, you'll find hard time like solving those problems.
I can definitely speak from personal experience for that. Yeah, it was not worth it. Like you have to study continuously. So I guess we can move on to linear algebra, Mat 188. It's one of the relatively more proof-heavy course, I'd say, in first year. So the course gives an introduction to vectors, transformation, and eigenvalues. So the course includes MATLAB labs that you would have to complete during practice. Asir, do you want to talk a little bit about this course, how your experience was?
I think it'd be nice to, like, I guess, classify the MATLAB portion, the actual course, kind of differently. Because sure, you are using some of what you learn in linear algebra. It's mainly just a computational coding. So, for example, one of the labs you look at forces from mechanics, another subject, and you use coding to figure out the solution to a problem. So the labs are a little bit different from the actual class. And so as for the actual class, this one I feel is definitely more important than calculus to have that like conceptual understanding, because there's a lot of ways to really trick yourself up, because this is a lot more visualization is a lot more important in this, and that, as Brenny said, they do expect some proofs out of you. And so coming from my math background, I've never done proofs before, and so that was also kind of challenging to learn as well. And so definitely knowing the conceptuals is very important for this course.
Speaking on like the visualization that you need for linear algebra, do you guys have any resources that you would recommend to help you visualize some of the concepts?
Yeah, I recommend this to everyone I talk to when I talk about linear algebra. It's 3 Blue, 1 Brown. He has a calculus course too. For linear algebra, the content of this course was like my favorite. At the beginning, I really, really disliked this course. I would go to lecture, I would listen to when I went to the course, I would like listen to the lectures, and I would like not understand the bigger picture at all. That was my personal experience. And something you're going to find out when you go to university is like, not everything works for you. Like it might work for somebody else, but you have to figure out what works for you. So for me, what I needed to do was I first watched the series, like this YouTube series, like linear algebra, 3 Blue, 1 Brown. I watched the series, and that kind of gave me a good conceptual and understanding, and it allowed me to visualize a lot of stuff. And then after that, look at the material and be like, what's happening? Like, why are we doing this? I understood the bigger picture, which let me actually go into the details that was needed. Now, personally, I stopped going to lectures for this course, and what I did instead was I used the textbook. I know a lot of people didn't like the textbook, but it worked for me because I really enjoyed the material, so I could actually stand reading a textbook. I personally like the textbook for this course. Exercises are important too. It allows you to get practice, and it kind of shows you, like, do you know how to apply some of the stuff, especially for a course like linear algebra.
Yeah, I agree with Hamza. Like in the midterm and the exam, there are always proof questions where they're asking you to create a proof for this, or try and tell if this proof is true or if it's false, and then explain why. So your understanding for the course material is going to help you a lot when you come to these questions, because it's purely just trying to figure out, how do I go from one state of the equation to another state? And for that, the understanding is very, very important.
This course, like, most people don't have a basic like background knowledge in this course, so I would say they also do start off really easy, but I think this course escalates really fast around like the second midterm, and like the material does get pretty dense, so I would recommending like trying to understand it from the beginning instead of just kind of doing the problems.
Yeah, I would recommend watch the series at the beginning, watch it every day, watch it before you sleep, like watch that YouTube series. I'm telling you, it really helps you, or really helped me visualize stuff. And the people who like actually watched it when I told them to or advised them to really benefited from it as well. So.
Mm-hmm. And just a quick mention on the lab. The labs were all like math labs, so like more computational math, like less. It's not really the same as coding. For people that don't have coding experience, they would know. They do take some time, so I would say like you have to spend some time on it. They're not extremely difficult. If you sit down and do it, you should be able to get through them. Just don't feel bad about not being able to do like the later ones, and they're not worth too much of your marks. So if you have more important things to do, you have to be able to kind of let go of that. If like, you can't get stuck on that. That's just like a general thing. But there's also a small project at the end of the semester, so it's not too hard, I wouldn't say, but it does require more time and effort than all the other labs.
It depends on the project you choose. The one I did was like analyze the motion of the vibration of a CO2 molecule or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did that one too.
Memory.
I would say you don't have to be too worried about them. You would get enough skills to be able to solve them at that point.
But I enjoyed those more because you actually apply like the knowledge you learned in linear algebra instead of just like doing like computational.
Why don't we move on to Civ 100 mechanics and MIE 100 dynamics, because they're both very like physics course. So mechanics focuses on analyzing forces acting on static structures, trusses, hydrostatics, stress and strain on materials and pulleys, whereas dynamics is more similar to high school physics with just adding on calculus to it, and it's way more advanced than high school physics, of course. It focuses on kinematics, Newton's law, and energy, momentum, harmonic oscillation. Yeah, these two courses are definitely the ones I guess people in EC, because we all came from EC or track one background, would feel like have a strong opinion about.
MIE 100 was really bad for me. I did really well in the first midterm, I think I got like a 90 something, but like that sounds more impressive. Midterms average was like 85 or something. But anyway, I did really well on that one. Then I failed the final. I got a failing grade on the second midterm, and I somehow managed to pass with a 60. I'm pretty sure they were nice to me and rounded it up. So I was one of those people who barely passed that Bernie was talking about. But for me, MIE 100, it's a course that I never really enjoyed, and I kind of had that stuck in my head. When I don't enjoy something, I just put it off, right? I'm pretty sure everyone's like that, right? You don't like something, you put it off. So I just put this course off. I didn't do anything for it. Something I would try to advise anybody for if you really dislike a course is like, I would try to study with your friends, because if you do that, then they kind of help you out and it kind of forces you to actually focus on the material itself. So that'd be a tip. And also, you might actually use this course, even if you don't think it's useful. Like if you go on the more robotics side, like some of this information will actually be useful. I mean, I'm not going to even do those courses, but I can understand that. Technical information you get from these courses will be applied if you go onto certain fields.
For both of these courses, I'd say it's very important to, I mean, for all courses, it's really important to do all the practice problems, but especially for these ones because they do have assigned problem sets. So for mechanics, I think everyone in first year would remember doing these problem sets because they're usually really hard to do because but I would say like, I think everyone remembers grinding out these questions. I think there's usually like, there's not too many, but don't get fooled by that. You'll be like taking 5 hours to do maybe one question. So it is hard and most people grind them together. Focus on the process and not be too fixated on the final solution is, I guess, the key to both of these courses.
Yeah, because there's so many steps involved in like the calculation, especially when you deal with like 3D structures. Like you have a matrix with a bunch of like different variables. And so it's really easy to like forget a minus sign somewhere. You want to make sure that when you're practicing, like focus on the process and that the process you're applying is correct and not necessarily the final answer.
Sarah, I know you did well in dynamics. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
I think the most important thing for both of these courses is that while they do have like mandatory problem sets, the reason they did that is because the key to these courses are just practice. Yeah. And unfortunately, it took me too long to realize that the weekly sets just weren't enough practice. Like you need to go a little bit above and beyond that, and then at some point, eventually, like the material will start to click, and you'll be able to like see the patterns and be able to understand this material a lot better. So I feel like my biggest advice for these two courses are just making sure you repeatedly practice and also staying up to date, because like every week you'll learn a new topic, and if you don't practice quickly enough, eventually you'll be too far behind. You'll be very far behind, and like when you start integrating these ideas together, you just won't be able to like make the connections.
Yeah, I would say one tip for like doing these questions though is use a ruler. Don't squeeze everything together because you're gonna have a drawing and you're gonna have all your formulas. So if you squish everything together, it's gonna be really messy and sometimes you might miss details. So I feel like that's really important. And just keep in mind that they really do dock your mark if like marks off for your assignment if your lines aren't straight or your assignment is like very messy.
Sorry, you also want to make sure your diagrams are readable because they give you a lot of marks. And if they're like very large and readable, then your TAs or whoever's the marking can very easily understand it. And like you don't want to lose out on like free marks just because you drew diagram very messily.
Yeah. So I would say also for these exams, focus on part marks because these exams are very hard. I think everyone can speak from experience for these exams, mechanics and dynamics. Sometimes you would look at the question and you would go like, oh, wow, I have no idea how to do it. So start with a diagram, draw what you think it is, and they are really generous with part marks. So just try and write down as many formulas you know if you're like too nervous on the exam.
They do have these like 2 quizzes that are in person that are like 15 minutes each, and you have to solve 2 questions. Like everyone does really bad in them, so don't worry about it because like, but first of all, like those quizzes aren't worth a lot. And second of all, like those quizzes are just like to help you understand the types of problems that are going to be on the midterm and on the exam. They're just prepping you and trying to make you like understand that the questions that you need to be able to do, like the time limit is very, very low for the amount of questions that you need to do. So you need to be able to, as Bernie said, like you need to be able to like go for the part marks, try to like write down as much as you can. But if you get stuck, I would highly advise just move on to the next question, because you don't have much time to just keep thinking about the last question that you were on. And it's better to just move on and get the part marks. Also for MIE 100, like I know they allow you a cheat sheet. So as I said with calc, I would write down all the equations and formulas that you use on on one piece of paper as you're going through the course. So that becomes your cheat sheet by the end of the course, so that you can use it on the exam.
I do agree that that is a very useful tip, summarizing each chapter kind of like periodically.
The Civ 100, this was the opposite for me, ironically enough, for dynamics. Civ 100 was a redemption story, for me. I failed the first midterm. I got like a 45, and then I ended up with like a 78 somehow, which was like pretty good. For a course like this, I remember at the beginning, I was extremely lost. Like I would try to attempt a question and I would just have no idea how to do it. So like Brittany said, try to do it with your friends, but I would always recommend for these questions, at least try them on your own. Like, sure, don't spend like hours on them, feel like you're not getting anywhere, but at least give them a single attempt on your own. Because I think it's really important to like see for this course that if you can actually do these problems. Because like for a course like mechanics, it's basically like repeating the same types of questions over and over again, like even more so than any other class. Like it's going to be 3 questions. You know what the problems are going to be about. So do previous finals, do previous midterms, and get to know those questions specifically. This is like more than any other course, and I've done like 2 years, right? This course, you know what's going to happen, so make sure you know how to do what's going to happen.
Let's move on to like another course that's relatively easy. So I would say let's talk about APS 110, engineering, chemistry, and material science. So material science talks about different types of structures a material can have, stress and strain of materials, and then moves on to talk about thermodynamics related fields. So I would say this course was easier for most people. The lectures are really interesting. They do some really cool experiments. We're not going to spoil the experiments for you guys, but they are really fun experiments that the prof demonstrates. I think, Himanish, you guys, for your year, you guys had something way different. You guys had the top hat structure. Do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So Top Hat was basically like a classroom website online that professors can use to post material and quizzes for students to solve. And my prof would basically post content for each chapter that he would teach us. So every single chapter would have a couple of videos and a couple of like paragraphs of content, and then you go through that content, and then throughout that content there would be 1 or 2 questions. So by the end of the chapter you finished about 20 questions, and then that was also put into your mark. The questions were relatively easy, but it was like really nice that it it helped you check your own understanding to see if you were actually understanding what the material was. And to be honest, like the Top Hat really helped me when I was studying for midterms and exams. Like sometimes like I wouldn't be able to fully understand the content that the professor was teaching me. Not that the professor was bad, it was just like my own.
If you don't vibe with a lecture, like it's all right. Like it happens, like it's not necessarily lecture's bad or you're bad. It's just like not everything always matches. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, for sure. No, you're right. Like that's exactly why the videos that the professor posted on Top Hat were so amazing for me, because they are super concise and they go into like exact detail that the professor does in lecture. So it was really helpful for me to get kind of like a second look into the material so that I can understand it better. And it's all online, so you can access it whenever, like studying whenever you want, so that you're not like restricted by your schedule. And so like those, like that material really helped me like when I'm studying for midterms and exams. Like I know me and my friends, like we would watch the videos on Top Hat in 2 times speed, all of them before the midterm or before the exam, so that we would have like basically everything memorized just before the exam started. Like that was our review technique. Not the best, but it's still really good. But yeah, I think that's one of the only things that was different from my year.
Asir, do you have anything to say about this course?
Well, I really enjoyed it, but that's because chemistry is my favorite subject. I feel that like they both brought up pretty good points. Like I feel like it's one of the more low-key subjects. You don't have as much work like week to week, but this one is all about understanding the concepts.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so those videos I also found were very helpful as well, just boiling down what you need to know in a very short amount of time.
I did
Yeah.
not like the textbook for this course personally. Like for a few specific topics, it actually kind of goes more in depth. But for a course like this, I feel like they cover a lot of topics like kind of from the top, I guess. It's like they don't go super in detail with a lot of topics, but they cover a lot of stuff. So for a course like this, I mean, I know it's like kind of weird to say, but you don't have to be bogged down on the specifics of how one particular thing works. Like for me, I try to understand a lot of things, so I get like stuck. For a course like this, the information provided in the videos is usually all you need to know. So I feel like this course is going to be a really easy transition to online.
Let's move on to Electrical Fundamentals, EC 110. So this course is in second semester, and this course is kind of the physics that you learn in high school. So it's half electromagnetic course and half circuits course. It is similar to high school, as I mentioned, but it is way more in depth, and then it kind of asks you for the fundamental understanding even more than high school. So the questions are harder, and you do have to spend some time on it. And then you also have labs for this course that you get to actually go in lab. I'm sure it'll be different for online. I believe that they might ask you for simulations online, but since we're all ECEs here, so I guess we can speak more about this course and see if anyone got inspired by this course, because I definitely think I liked circuits from this course, and therefore is why I went into it. But I know a lot of ECs also really hated this course.
This course, I enjoyed the beginning. Like the first half is electromagnetics. Actually, before I even talk about that, just disclaimer, like this course and also dynamics and all the math courses have a lot of resources online, like Asir said. Like look online for this type of stuff. There's a lot of content available. Yeah, anyway, my specific experience, you guys are lucky you won't have to do the labs. I personally hated the labs. It felt like I did like stuff wouldn't work, like components wouldn't work. I'd be like, afterwards, I'd be emotionally drained. I was partnered with my friend. We would like hate each other right after. It was a really annoying experience, but that might just be me. Anyway, I really enjoyed the lecture's first half because like electromagnetics, like you kind of have to think about what's happening. It makes it a lot easier. I feel like circuits is almost like pure math. You just do the questions. Like it's like really computational. So the second half, I feel like you mostly practice. Like it's good to learn techniques, but the second half practicing is like way more important than necessarily the first half. Like first half, you have to conceptualize more than the second half.
I would say though, still important to attend lectures for the second half, because from my experience, because I did miss some lectures, it was hard to catch up on some questions, because what all the prof does like in the later half is he goes through like 3 questions like that are like circuits questions, and there are specific techniques that they talk about during those lectures, and if you miss it, you miss it. You'll be going the long way while everyone else is doing it really short and fast. And I think that's really important for this course, because you're going to be doing a lot of questions.
I also believe that going to lecture for the second half on circuits is also important, because like depending on your prof, like they may teach you like different ways of using those techniques, and some of them may be faster than others. So for example, in second year, you kind of redo what you learn in the circuits portion of EC 110, and then they teach you a method that's even faster than what you learn in first year, and it would help you save so much time if you learn this the first time. And so some profs may have taught it, some may not have, and just making sure that you like have the best knowledge going in can definitely help you save time and do things more effectively.
Yeah, that even applies to midterms and exams. Like these questions, some of them take a long time and they can be super tedious. And if you mess up at the beginning, like all your work is wrong and you have to erase and try again. Like I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't like this course, is because that solving the problem is very tedious. And once you've solved them, like you don't even know, like half the time it's not even correct, right? So you have to go back, figure out your mistake, and try and do it all over again. But
sorry, I'm just going to cut you off a little bit there. I would say for this course, definitely make sure you have a calculator that can solve systems of linear equations. The more, the better, just because like then you can kind of like lay off the like computation to your calculator, and that way you kind of won't have mistakes. And like as long as you show the setup like on your test paper, and you show the final answer and say like use your calculator to like do the steps in between, the markers are generally okay with that. And it also just saves you like the 5 to 10 minutes of like actually computing these like 3 or like 4 systems of linear equations.
Yeah, make sure to get like the best calculator that you can have on these exams, because it really does save you a lot of time.
And you end up using it in your second, and I think we're gonna use it in our third year too.
Yeah.
And so it's a good investment to invest in a better calculator.
Yeah.
For this course, I wasn't taught like there's a matrix method. I think that's kind of what Asir was referring to. At least that's what I feel like he was. Yeah. So I didn't learn that first year, but I definitely learned that second year because you do another circuit course. So for this course, search how to do these questions using a matrix. It'll save you a lot of time. I didn't know how to do that, and if I did, it would have made doing tests a lot easier.
For sure, yeah, I do agree. Now having this knowledge in second year, I would say it definitely does help. For this course specifically, there are mandatory weekly homeworks, and I think that's good because it helps people that not procrastinate, so you actually do the homeworks. And I do think it's really important because it helps you through different methods of like using different methods to solve a circuit, because there are so many different circuits that exist, I guess. So yeah, just remember to go through them, preferably by yourself, but it's nice to work in a group sometimes too. So I guess now moving on to the more C aspect of ECE, the course APS 105, Computer Fundamentals. Of course, if you are in track 1, you have the option to choose the Python alternative. But if you want to go into ECE, you have to take APS 105, Computer Fundamentals. So it teaches the fundamentals of coding from beginning with the C language. It goes over coding syntax, print statements, conditional loops, sorting, searching, and trees. So just making sure that everyone is up to date with kind of like the level of coding. So it's okay if you're a beginner. Again, all the first year courses really do try and put everyone up to the same level.
Okay, APS 105. So I was basically a beginner, and the lectures for this course, I mean, disclaimer, my personal experience again, but lectures for these courses go over a lot of content and like, okay, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. This is how you do this. So it's really syntax focused. So it's like kind of tells you like how to do certain things. And then at least in my experience, I did not get a lot of practice questions out of it. Like I feel like when you do a midterm for this course, at least for me, it was a completely different experience and the type of questions, even on like labs and that were shown. I mean, it wasn't completely different than lectures, but there was just so much more, right? So for this course specifically, I would really recommend practicing previous midterms, because if you don't, like, you're going to have like almost no idea, at least I feel like you'll have like no idea how to do a lot of the questions in a timely manner. And for labs, try to start early. It's really important you do these labs and you try to do them on your own. I feel like it can be a lot of fun too. Like you can talk to your friends if you're like having some troubles, but like you can't copy each other's code, obviously. So labs, try to start early, midterm and final, practice a lot before.
Yeah, I would say do the labs yourself. I had zero coding experience, like zero. I didn't even take anything related to coding when I was in high school. But this course definitely starts off easy for me, so it was okay. And by doing the labs, I think I've definitely learned a lot. The lectures were useful because they have the things that you need to know, but by doing the labs, you kind of understand it way more. And yeah, I just want to say, please do the labs yourself. They are really strict on these kind of things. They punish both like the side that got copied and the side that copies. So they would teach you this in APS 100, I believe, but just remember, do the labs yourself. I think this course is definitely meant for beginners at the beginning, and it just escalates really fast around like lab 5 and like midterms. It just goes way up. So remember to also always catch up.
Yeah, even especially for the midterms and the exams, like these are going to be like one of the hardest that you've ever done. I think for last year, our average was 50% for a midterm. And the questions like take a long time because for most of the questions, you're writing out code for a given problem, and it takes time to get the correct syntax to make sure your code works. And it also takes time to like first understand what the problem is even like saying or what it wants you to do. So
Yeah.
like I would recommend that like you do like practice coding a lot, especially like in labs. And like I would suggest even outside of labs, you do your own personal practice, because even people who had coding experience from high school struggled with the midterm and exams because they were just like some of the questions were just like that messed up.
I would say in the last episode, I mentioned that for this course, it's either you're really, really, really good at coding, you just ace everything, and then there's everyone else, people that's coded before, people that's never coded before. It's like all the same for you. So yeah, you can definitely work for this. Asir, do you have any thoughts on this course?
Yeah, I'm also coming at it from like the background of someone who's never coded before. And I think like it's actually unhealthy to think of it that way, like, oh, those guys have coded before. Like it's okay that they're not struggling and they're just going through it. Like the most important thing for this course is just like starting those labs early. Like these are going to be like your main source of learning. So make sure you spend your time on them. And like if you do encounter difficulty, don't copy someone else's code. Also, don't look at their code because that can also lead to issues where like you have similar code and can be flagged. You probably just want to like talk it over with someone, and they can help you figure out what to do. And other two or three have mentioned, there's definitely a huge learning curve in this course where initially they start off slowly because they have to cater to everyone, but eventually midway through the course they kind of go into more complex topics, and the course really ramps up fast. So you need to make sure that you're practicing in the background, like outside of the labs, because some of the content that's not in labs is going to be tested, and some of them are also kind of difficult where and very conceptual. Like for example, recursion. It's not something that you test you in labs, but it's something that you need to know very well for the exam. So you need to make sure you practice like paper questions.
Yeah. I just want to ask you guys to all give me like some general thoughts, tips, or opinions on how to like survive first year, and maybe like some resources that you use, like a quick summary. Hamza, why don't you go first?
I mean, first year, I mean, it's going to be so different now that it's online, right? Or
For
a lot of
sure.
people will have an online experience. So with first year courses, I would really, especially it being online, they're going to be posting a lot of lectures and stuff, but I want everyone to like try to figure out what works for themselves. Like there's no defined way to succeed or to understand in a course. Like think about it. People in a different university are learning similar material. Like you can learn in multiple ways. There's not one defined way. You've got to figure out what works for you. So that means trying different things. So try other material online. Try to learn in different ways. Experiment a bit and then do what works for you. I know it's going to be difficult, especially online, like managing every course and all its work. Try to figure out a system that works for you. And it's okay to fall behind, but like don't let that falling behind become a habit because it'll just become worse and worse.
Yeah, Himanish, you want to be next?
The one tip that I would give is that organization is very important, especially with the courses going online. They're going to be throwing a lot of material at you, as Hamza said. So you need to be able to organize when you're going to be listening to the lectures, when you're going to be doing like studying for them, when you're going to be doing the practice problems, the weekly assignments. There's going to be a lot of stuff thrown at you, but organization is the one thing that's going to keep you sane in first year. I think like, especially in my case, if I didn't have any sort of timetable or schedule, like I would be all over the place, and like I would not have been prepared at all for any of my like midterms, exams, anything like that. The resource that like I use for like scheduling my time is Google Calendar, as Asir mentioned before. It's really helpful because it lets you can actually import your schedule from Acorn directly onto Google Calendar, so it automatically lays it out for you, and then after that you can plan out, hey, I'm gonna study for this course at this time, or I know I have my midterm here, so I'm gonna remember to do like 5 minutes of last minute studying before then. And it really helps you to figure out how much time you want to spend on studying and how much time you have for like free time, like to relax and to chill with friends. That's just my tip. Yeah.
Asir?
Yeah, and I guess my tip, I'd say make sure you know your resources. Like in first year, there's a lot of resources for everyone. There's a lot of seminar, like there's gears in academic seminar held by upper year students who can kind of help you out. There's a lot of different aid offices. There's like a math aid office. Make sure you know your prof's office hours. They're very helpful and insightful, and they've been teaching these courses for years. So even if you are struggling, you can ask them for their advice, and they know how to approach their course the best. As well, the first year office, they have a lot of other resources. There's an academic learning strategist, for example, so they can kind of like help you figure out better ways to study if you are struggling. And so make sure you schedule an appointment with them early on because they do fill up very quickly.
I do agree. For IEEE's podcast, for this podcast, we also have an episode in the future about kind of how to organize your time and how to like study tips or how to like procrastinate less. So also you can tune in for that. But thank you guys so much for being here with me today. I think you guys provided some very detailed like information on each of the course, which hopefully would help because next year is going to be online and it's going to be harder for you to work and stay organized and focused as a student. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you
being
for
here.
having us. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, that's all for today's episode of First Year Decoded. Thanks for listening, and thank you once again to Himanish, Hamza, and Nasir for being here with us today. Remember to tune in next week for a detailed breakdown of each of the engineering science courses. This podcast is hosted by IEEE U of T. Content creation done by Akinori Kimura, Brittany Chow, Himanish Jindal, Haochen Zhang, and Catherine Liang. Audio edited by Shui Wang, and graphics done by Kathy Zhang. Special thanks to Sierra Cowdery, Himanish Jindal, and Hamza Butt for being on the show with us today. Remember to follow us on our social media, IEEE U of T, to get more information and updates about future events and more content. Once again, thanks for listening to First Year Decoded. We will see you on the next episode.